All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start the session. So welcome everybody. My name is Coco M. This is the second session of the Santuri Online Music Production Sessions. And today our chief tutor, the big man, Tony, is
Hey,
here. And I'm going to hand it over to you to do a proper introduction. Tony, the founder of CDR, and he can explain more about that. And in the room, we have Malkia, we have Janice, Rafiki, and Black Moon. Still waiting on a few more people. So welcome, Tony. Thank you very much. Thank you very much
thank
for
you
being
so
here today.
much. It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. Hello everybody. Really good to meet you. It's been too long. Why is it? Why now? Why now? It's been too long. So to
You
give you a bit
tell
of
me.
background, my name is Tony Nwachukwu. I'm a producer, DJ, and educator based in London. I've been in the music industry a long time, and I've seen lots of changes. And what I'm really passionate about is, creating opportunities for artists, music producers to come together and share work and kind of build your confidence and build your networks and be passionate about the music that you make in a safe environment. I actually started off making music. Well, in fact, to go right to the beginning, my background, my parents are Nigerian. And what African parents are like. You have to, the fact that I said I wanted to be a musician when I was 10 or 11 years old, they're like, no, you have to concentrate on your English and maths, etc. So I wasn't actually allowed to be a musician. So when I was growing up, I kind of used to smuggle records into my house, and I had a real passion for technology and real passion for music. So when I went to university, that's kind of all I did. I DJ'd, put on parties, bought some equipment, made some music, and kind of got my kind of music production chops on. And then from there, that led to me working in music for a while before embarking on my own career in a band called Attica Blues, who are a beat led vocal band. We're inspired by hip hop, we're inspired by soul, we made a couple of records in the mid '90s on this label called Mowax and Sony, and our kind of label and bands who are similar to us were people like Morchiba, Maloko, people like DJ Shadow. So it's kind of like what they coined trip hop. Bands like Portishead, Massive Attack, that kind of den tempo, hip hop inspired music. But with us, obviously vocals were very, very important to us. So I did that for a number of years, and then I set up CDR, which is essentially my organization that's in the business of working with artists and kind of really exploring music making and creating opportunities for people to share what you're working on, get some feedback from people, build networks, and build connections. And I've been doing that for almost 20 years now, which is quite weird when I say that. Gosh, anyway. So in my time, all my world is based around music making and working with artists and making records with people, helping people make records, sound design, education. Pretty much like David. We're both very passionate about this space. So today, I have the pleasure on talking to you about what I'm really, really passionate about is, beat making, rhythm programming. And to me, the thing that's really good about rhythm programming and beat making is that it's something that you can really make your own. You can really personalize it. So what I'm going to do today is talk you through a little bit of the history of beat making from the kind of equipment side of things. And then I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into kind of some programming techniques. And then we're going to kind of see how you get on with that. And then there'll be lots of opportunity for you to obviously make music, some beats yourself, and kind of take what I'm showing you and put it into your own practice, and we'll kind of feedback with each other. But before I continue, tell me a bit about yourselves. Tell me your name, and your kind of connection to music making, beat making in particular. Starting with, let's start with DJ Malika. Malachi?
Malkia,
Malkia?
unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, it's Malkia. I like
Now
your
I know.
passion, like Malachi. So I'm Malkia and I'm a DJ, and of course I want to be a producer. So yeah, I've had some background in production, and we've had workshops with Coco M. We've had like workshops with Santuri. So I have some background, but I'm not good with Ableton. So when this chance came on, I definitely took it. I have an interest in hip hop and house, basically electronic music in general, like drum and bass. Jungle, funk. So yeah, I have a passion for like hip hop and electronic music. So I've been trying to make my own sound called Hiptronic, just a mixture of hip hop and electronic music. So with production, I want to be able to perform live and DJing, and also making music while DJing and while performing on stage. So that's my interest. I hope I'll get to know um, about you more, Tony, and get to interact more. Yeah.
Cool. And and now I know how to pronounce your name. I won't ever get it wrong. So.
Thanks.
Okay, next up, Janice.
Hi everyone.
Hey.
Okay. So I've always had music there for me. It's just always been there. I've always sang since I was a kid. I used to perform like in church, and that grew my interest in performing. And I recently got into production, and it's such a wonderful thing for me to be able to express myself through music. Yeah, it's new for me. I've been in the music industry as a singer and songwriter, but now as a producer, it's really different because I'm really playing in a new field, and it feels great to me. It feels like empowerment, it feels like power, and I'm to learn, and I'm just so glad that I can be here with everyone. Looking forward to this class. Yeah.
Wonderful. Cool. Likewise. Thank you so much. Rafiki?
Okay. Okay, so I'm Rafiki. I'm a musician. I guess I started as a singer, and then I taught myself how to rap. And then now I just feel like I keep evolving, and I just want to know I want to know more about music and how to make it from scratch. Also, the idea, I love performing. Performing is my favorite part of music, so I want to be the best performer I can be. And I feel like I'm super inspired by FKJ and people who do solo performances. I'd love to pull something like that off. Yeah, so that's my main inspiration for production. Just knowing more about music.
Cool, thank you. This is great, people. Eve, DJ Eve.
Oh, hello, guys.
Hey.
Okay, I'm a DJ and I'm a film producer in the video side. Okay, I'm new into music production. I tried FL a time back, but I didn't succeed. So when this time came, I just grabbed it, and I'm so happy. I want to learn more about Ableton. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Labdi?
Unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. How is everybody doing? Are you doing okay?
Oh, good.
Yes, thank
you.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to know that you're doing well. My name is Labdi. I'm a singer-songwriter and performer from Nairobi. I play orutu, which is a single-stringed fiddle that women are not allowed to play. So in that sense, I'm kind of cool.
a rebel.
Yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Why I'm into production now is, first of all, I saw the post by Coco M. Thank you so much for having me. I think it came at the exact right moment for me because it's something I've thought about for a very long time. Music production, that is. And I've had so many conversations with people about, there's not enough women doing music production, which is not really, I don't think it's true particularly. I think it's just, there are not many well-known female producers within East Africa, which is unfortunate, but we're trying to change that. And that is one of the reasons why I'm inspired to use Ableton. I tried FL, of course, like a lot of years ago, and it was okay, but I never really just followed up on it. But this is exciting because it's an actual class. When we're at home, there's nothing else to do but do work, and I'm here to learn. I'm really excited.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And last but no means least, Black Moon.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
You're not going to be able to see me. My eyes busted. But I'm glad to be here. This is actually the first time I'm in an actual class with people I know. In terms of production, I'm a singer, songwriter, guitarist, DJ. I'm self-taught in all of these. DJing, or rather DJ-wise, my partner is the one who really got me interested into it, and I learned what I know from her. But I'm excited to be here. The little I know about Ableton is from YouTube Academy. And we are trying to push boundaries. Yeah, or in music, and yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Cool. Thank you so much. Was winner what? Was that winner of what? Ah. Congratulations on winning the Santuri competition. There you go.
Congratulations.
Oh,
Even I didn't know that.
Oh, nice.
It's actually
amazing.
like my first actual, projects, like a complete project, like mini project on Ableton. So yeah, I was actually surprised. I was like, oh, guys really like my stuff. So yeah.
Tony was one of the judges on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
I still haven't got my Apple. It's all good. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for your insightful introductions. So I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, this is a safe. What was that?
DJ, sorry for interrupting. It's Black Moon. DJ Ivy is here as well. She's gonna try joining.
Oh, okay.
On machine, but let her introduce herself.
Okay, wicked.
Hi everyone, my name is Ivy. Hi, it's so lovely to see familiar faces. I'm super interested. Excited to finally be here. I'm a DJ and a really amateur producer. I also tried to dip my foot into FL first and then didn't go so well. Tried Ableton and it went quite well, but it's sort of complex and I would appreciate all the help. So this is like a sigh of relief for me. Thank you guys for this opportunity. I'll be joining you very soon. I'm trying to set up my laptop so I can join.
Okay. Well, Elise, you're on your phone at the moment?
No.
Okay, cool. So yeah, if you can stay on the call and get your laptop set up at the same time, that'd be great. If not, it's all good.
Okay.
So just to say, thank you very much for your insightful introductions, everyone. And just to remind you that this is a safe space for you You know, the whole point of these workshops and masterclasses are to obviously give you the skills to realize your potential, right? So, and this session is no different. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, even if you think it might be silly or irrelevant, you know, as long as it's to do with beats, technology, a sound, just stick it in the chat and we'll make time for it. Equally, if I either speaking too fast, because sometimes when I get really excited, I just ignore you and start making my own beats. So if that happens, just tell me to slow down. But equally, if I'm using language that is, you know, sounds too technical, or if there's a word that I use that you're unsure of, just stick it in the chat, right? The important thing for me is that you really get the most out of this that you can. And I think a lot of the time when it comes to anything that's creative, right? You know this from those of you who perform or you DJ, you know what it's like when you're starting off. It's this mix of, you know, happy naivety and learning to deal with so many different things of your DJ. You know, obviously, you know, selecting your tracks, what order they should play in, reading the crowd, you know, whether, you know, what are you using, USB stick, vinyl, CDJs, you know, there's so many different things to think about. But ultimately what you're doing is you're crafting your workflow. You're crafting your way of doing it. You know, the way, you know, I DJ is different to the way DJ Eve DJs, which are different to, you know, David. Do you know what I mean? You know, but it's all DJing. And music production and beat making, it's the same thing, right? You just basically have to start off and then build slowly, and over time you know begin to kind of develop habits and techniques that stay with you, you know, for your entire career. You know, I still pretty much the way I make beats nowadays, in principle, it's the same way I've always made them since I started. The technologies may change, or the style of programming or rhythms may change, but my approach to it is the same, you know. And for me, it's all kind of rooted in hip hop, really, regardless if I make a hip hop track or an avant-garde soundscape for a theater piece. You know, I always approach things from a hip hop perspective in terms of my thinking and attitude, I would say. So I'm going to switch over now to a little not presentation, but a deck of some slides that I've put together for you, just to set some context for this, what we're going to do, and give you a little bit of history. All right, so give me 1 second. I'll just share my screen. Audio there, cool. Cool, can everyone see this slide?
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Okie dokie. Let me just move this thing out of the way for myself.
Yes.
All right, so we've said our hellos, which is good. So let's just ask the question, you know, what is beat making? Anyone care to answer that? I know it's a very simple question, but let's just be clear about what it is before we move forward. Anyone want to answer before I point at people? What do you think, Black Moon? Considering you won the competition, I think you should start. What is beat making to you, anyway?
Well, I would. Okay, how do I say this? It's an arrangement of elements to create music,
Mm-hmm.
be it drums, synths, whatever instruments or elements one is drawn to musically, or like, you know, in the type of creation you're going for. I would say it's just an arrangement of those elements.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agreed. Anyone else want to add to that? All right. So essentially all of the above, right? So, you know, in my mind, you know, beat making is well, it's a few things. So in its broadest terms, it's the art of, making music that has where the rhythm is first, the primary or the most important aspect of the music, right? The kick, snare, the hi-hat, how loud the kick is, how loud the snare is, the thing that's kind of beat driven, right? And in essence, that has its roots in hip hop, right? So in my mind, yes, it's kind of, for me, it's beat-led music. It can take any form, it can take any genre, but the art of beat making is, the real focus and attention to detail on the rhythm side of things. And you'll hear that term used a lot more, obviously, within the kind of hip hop community. And when I say hip hop community, I'm more referring to people who are, who make music that's kind of boom bap, inspired by, the mid 80s to say the mid 2000s. I wouldn't say, well, there's all kinds of beat making, of course, but if you talk to the average kind of producer, beat making will conjure up, images of samples using breaks, hip hop from the golden era, that kind of thing. And the reason why that's interesting for me is that, and this is something that we'll talk a bit about when we're actually doing this course, is, beat making is, of course, a rhythmic art form, but it's also a sound aesthetic art form as well, in terms of the difference between beats that are made that go through, say, samplers, or beats that are made that go through, say, an analog drum machine. And everything in between. There are beats that are made using FM synthesis, right? They've all got different tones and different characters. So when it comes to making, beat making, music production in general, having a really good sense of these different tonal characters will really help kind of you understand the kind of beats that you want to make, and the kind of rhythms that you want to make, and the kind of sound that you want to explore. Okay. So what we're going to do now is just going to talk a little bit about the history of some of the equipment that is should be like implanted in your brain, right? And this will also help when it comes to making beats, having a really good understanding of kind of like where the starting point is, in terms of sound and character. So this is the Roland 808 drum machine, arguably the most important drum machine in the history of music. Standard. It's like the drum machine that has stood the test of time, not necessarily in terms of the actual machine itself, but the sounds in this machine are basically the foundations of electronic dance music. Every form of dance music, electronic music, has the 808 in some shape or form, right? This particular instrument was made in 1980 by a company called Roland, and Roland are a very, very significant company when it comes to drum machines. We'll talk more about that in a second. But this machine here actually started off life as a drum machine that was known as an accompaniment machine, right? So, and what that meant was there's a huge market for home organs as kind of home pianos. So what this machine was supposed to do, it was supposed to be a machine that sits on the side on top of an organ or on top of a keyboard, and you program rhythms. And the idea is that at home you could have this electronic drum machine that accompanies playing, organ, hymns or whatever, right? But because of when it came out in 1980, and because the sounds are electronic, they don't sound real. The snare on this doesn't sound like a real acoustic snare, right? When it came out, it was at the tipping point of when things went from analog to digital, when sampling started to permeate instruments, right? So when it came out, it didn't actually do very well. It actually didn't sell when it came out, right? And something that you'll see throughout history, particularly with Black music, particularly with electronic music, is that people gravitate towards the equipment that's obviously cheap, cost effective, or equipment that people don't want, and make it good, right? So 808 is the kind of benchmark drum machine for that, right? So when it came out, it didn't do very well, but there was a genre called electro, that basically embraced the drum machine, and it became a staple. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know why that happened. Can you ever still see it? Still this? Yeah. So it started to be used in production studios in New York and different parts of the world as well. But it really came to fruition in 1983 with records like Planet Rock, and a whole bunch of records. We'll play some a bit later. And it has a really distinct sound. All the sounds are characteristic. You'll actually know the sounds that it produces. And the thing about the 808 is that year on year, it permeates society in terms of electronic dance music. It permeates all kinds of music. Started off with electro, funk in the early 80s, then went into into hip hop per se. Then there's like Miami bass. It's into jungle in some respects, and even today, it's the foundations of trap in terms of the hi-hats that are used in trap, the kick drum, the tuned bass drum from the trap. It has its roots in the kick drum in the 808. So this drum machine here is like iconic, and it's really good to be familiar with it, with the sounds, and you'll know them. And in terms of music making, what's really good to know is that the more you become familiar with these drum machines, not necessarily their history, of course, but their sounds and their tones, it really gives you a really good starting point if you want to explore a particular kind of music or a particular kind of feel or a particular kind of tone, right? Next up, we have its younger brother, the 909. And this is synonymous with, it's equally, I guess it's equally as famous as the 808 for sure. It's basically the foundations of dance music. Any, a Chicago house, Detroit house, the sounds are synonymous with those music forms. You'll know the kick drum, you'll know the snare in a similar way to the 808. It came out in 1985, and again in a similar way. It wasn't so popular when it came out, but again, it was a drum machine that was adopted by the underground music producers, underground dance producers, and along with synthesizers like the Juno 106, JX3P, it was basically the foundations of Chicago house, Detroit house. So to say, particularly in the heyday of Chicago house, in the late 80s, 88, 89, you would not hear a record that did not have the 909 kick or snare or hi-hat, ride cymbal, clap. They're just like classic sounds. And again, if you hear the 909, you'll know the sounds from a lot of dance records that we hear even to this day, right? So the thing to really think about is that even though, in this day and age, we've all got access to sample packs, we've all got access to, lots of different sounds in libraries and plugins, particularly with electronic dance music, it's almost like the roots of all the sounds that we dance to are from these drum machines, and 909 is definitely up there, 808 is definitely up there. Now, alongside the TR-808 and the TR-909, again, they're both Roland, right? There are other drum machines in this kind of family. So there's the 626, there's the 707, and the 727 river percussion generator. These are all like classic drum machines. And the great thing is, the samples are available in Ableton, so we can check them out. But in terms of the history of drum machines and beat making and rhythms, really understanding and knowing these sounds, it's a really good, really good to know, because again, these are all like foundational sounds that are really important, and obviously really good sounds to use. Next up, we have this drum machine here. This is the Lindrum. It was the first drum machine, commercially available drum machine to contain samples. up until, and this came out in 1982. Okay, now before the LINDRUM came out, most of the drum machines were like the 808, right? They used circuitry to generate sounds, you know, and they were obviously great, you know, they were great. But the problem is that they didn't sound like a real drummer, right? So when this drum machine came out, it basically transformed it. There was one before this called the LM1, the LIN1, which came out a bit earlier. I remember what I was saying remember what I was saying earlier about the fact that the 808 didn't sell. It was the reason why, because the industry had moved on. The original LIN came out, and because that was based on samples, it had like a real kick, a real snare, a real rim shot. It sounded like a real drummer, right? So people were like, okay, if I'm going to choose an instrument, drum machine, I'm going to choose one that sounds like a real drummer rather than one that sounds like a synthetic drummer. So the 808 didn't sell because of things like the LIN when the LIN came out. Now this LIN here, this is the newer one that came out, like I said, a couple of years later, and this is like a classic drum machine in the same way. It's the same way that, you know, there's a lot of records in the early 80s that featured the 808. A lot of records, particularly with pop records, featured the LINDRUM, whether it was this one or the LM1. Artists like Prince, you know, a lot of kind of early British electronic bands like Human League, that kind of synthwave sound of the synth pop sound, I should say, of the early 80s. Pretty much you can say that this drum machine was used. It was hugely popular at the time, and it almost like signified the big move away from you know, studios, you know, definitely not hiring drummers for a while. You know, it's a really unique sound, and again, because it featured samples in it, you could swap out the sound, you could change the kick drum, you know, using it, you know, it's all based on EPROMs, like chips, so you'd change a kick drum for a different one or whatever. And at the time it was hugely influential in terms of pop music, and the fact that artists and producers had access to a drum machine that had sounds that sounded like a real drummer. So moving on from those, you've got these two here, and these are arguably the most important sample-based drum machines. The LINDRUM, and they differ to the LINDRUM because the LINDRUM, although you could change the sounds, to change the sound, you had to physically open the box and replace a sound chip that had, say, a kick drum with another one, right? Whereas these two have got sampling capabilities. So what that means is it's got a, you know, it's got a line input, and you can see on this machine here on the SP12, it's got a big sample panel, right? So basically you'd plug in a microphone or plug in a line level device or a turntable, and you could basically record your own sounds into it and edit them. So for the first time, you know, pretty much in history, these two are the most accessible drum machines to producers, you know, the machine on the left, the SP12, is essentially the foundation of hip hop. Essentially, it is, because it has it came out in 1983, and there's this one, and then the SP1200. It's kind of like a, you know, it's bigger brother, and because it had this sampling capability, you know, producers, particularly in America, used it as a way of, you know, sampling breaks. It only had 5-second sampling time to start, you know, when you'd added the turbo to it. So you could only do things like kick snares, or if you were clever, you would sample a record or vinyl, pitch it up to 45, so it records more in, then tune it down to get more in. So it's basically good for kick snares, or kicks and a little bit more, or snares and a little bit more, or phrases. But it was that gave it its character. And also because it was 12-bit in terms of sampling resolution, it's got a particular kind of graininess to the sampling, you know. And again, if you listen to records, particularly in the early 80s, from 83 on, high point about 85, 86, people like DJ Premier, Run DMC, Pete Rock, these people, you know, you can hear the sound of the SP12 in those records. Similarly, on the right hand side, you've got the Akai MPC, which is kind of like came out a bit later in 1987. And this machine is slightly different in the fact that it's got much more advanced sequencing capabilities. It can sample, and it's got a higher resolution than the SP12 because it came out a bit later. But you could, record keyboard phrases. You had a much more sophisticated sequencer. So this machine was super influential for the sound of swing beat, 80s R&B, Jodeci, Guy, all that kind of swing sound of America 80s. This machine is the foundations of it all, because of the fact that it had this really unique swing sound character to it, and the fact that you could record keys and bass into it, so you could treat it like an all-in-one solution. So the reason why these two are particularly important to this idea of beat making is because they are the two drum machines that created the identity for beat making. The ones I showed you before, they're more like drum machines, right? So they've got pre-built sounds, you program the pre-built sounds, and you can tune the sounds, of course, and you can pan them. There's some kind of control, but these pretty much you can make them your own. You can basically record any sound that you would imagine. You can program any sound that you could imagine, and they were really adopted by the genres that we love. Hip hop, R&B, dance music per se, right? And these two are, like I said, they're the foundation of anything that's based on sampling. So again, where these come into it is that in terms of feel, particularly with the MPC, and tone and character, definitely from the SP12, right? So between all these drum machines, these are all the foundations of everything that we're listening to nowadays, pretty much, whether it's the tone and character and the sequencing style of the 808 or the 909, whether it's the sampling aesthetic, the tone of the SP12 or the groove of the MPC, this is it, So if you do get the opportunity to have a go, to try an 808 or a 909 or an SP12 or an MPC 60, if you know someone that's got one, make some time to check it out, because there's something really beautiful about using a hardware device. Roland released a boutique series, so they released smaller versions of the 808 and the 909 and the 626, actually 606 I should say. So you can get those in modern versions of those. Akai, this is the MPC. They went on to make loads of others, MPC 3000, which people like Dilla used, DJ Shadow, and they've got a whole bunch of others, MPC 1000, which is a small portable one, a whole bunch of other ones now. But this MPC 60 was like the root of it all. And again, this idea that you've got this machine that basically gives you this kind of tactile way of programming rhythms. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we're just going to go onto YouTube just for a couple of minutes, and I'm just going to just play you some tracks, some tracks and some music that contains the drum machines that we were talking about. Just to give you a sense of it. And what I'll do as well is at the end of this session, I'll post you I'll put like a resource sheet together for you guys to check out in your own time. Okay, right. So first of all, I'm going to play you a record called Planet Rock by African Bambaataa and Soul Sonic Force. So this record is the foundation. It's think about the drum sounds. Of course, some of you may know this. It's a classic record, of course, but think about it from a drums point of view. All the sounds are from the 808. The notable things there are, so the kick. In this case, it's an 808 kick that's quite short. It's got it's fast attack, quite short. But notably, you've got the snare, then the hi-hat and the percussion sounds. They are definitely the 808, right? So in stark contrast to Planet Rock, we have another record that has got the 808 all over it, which is this record. Okay. Again, pay attention to the drums. Cool. Okay. So I could lift this up forever. So yeah, so two different tracks, right? One of them is like an electro funk classic. This is obviously a soul classic. They both use the same drum machine, but they sound completely different, right? In Marvin's case, it sounds a bit warmer, kick drums slightly bigger, much more percussive sounding. As with the Planet Rock record, it's a bit harsher, a bit faster in some respects. It's because it has a different application, right? This is much more about almost making a kind of soul ballad, whereas the Planet Rock record is about moving people, you know, making people break dance, right? So we'll talk about feel and tempo a bit later, but these are also things to kind of bear in mind. We'll listen to a couple more tracks now with drum machines, and also something to really notice when it comes to making rhythms and making beats, right? A lot of the time, and I'll say this again later, is just focusing on one bar, right? I'll say it now and I'll say it again later, but just focusing on one bar. If you don't know what I mean, or just hold that thought, one bar, right? One bar. Cool. So let's listen to, right. So yeah. So again, when it comes to the, another drum machine, the Lindrum. Prince smashed the Lindrum. Pretty much his first couple of records, I've got Lindrum all over them. I'm going to play the classic, 1999. And again, focus on listening to the drums, right? And again, what you'll hear is there's a kind of like in terms of the rhythm, there's obviously kick, snare, and then there's this kind of knocking sound. That's the sound of the rim shot in the Lindrum that's kind of tuned down. It's, you know, in the industry, they call it the Prince knock. That is basically a tuned down rim sound, which is very characteristic of a lo-fi sample that's tuned down. It's got a kind of tone and character to it. So let's have a quick listen to this. So I'll just do just a couple more examples, because again, I think one thing that's really useful to know, and yes, I know, you know, these are old records, they're kind of classic records, but it's really interesting to see how they've been applied, particularly in contemporary music, and particularly how the character of the drum machines change depending on who the artist is and what the application is, whether it's a pop record, dance record for the dance floor or whatever, right? So a couple more. This is again, classic dance record, Good Life by Inner City. This is 909 all over it. Okay, just one more. Let's have a think about this now. Yeah, let me think about, let me have a look. Yeah, cool. So this is a good example of how the MPC 60 would have been used in the mid 80s in kind of swing beat R&B era. This is a record that's a good example of it. Cool. Okay. Any questions or thoughts on what you've seen so far?
I mean, Tony, it's amazing to learn and to know like the different, you know, I just always see 808. I know 808 is for hip hop mostly. That's what I've known. But it's amazing to see that there's actually like different drum machines, or should I say drum kits?
Yeah, drum machines.
Yeah, like for different sounds and you playing all the different sounds, and you know, to experience it, like it gives you a different shift on how, you know, how I'm looking at production from now, you know, because for me, you know, you just go and get like 808 when you want to do hip hop, you know, but I don't really know like the background, and so this gives like, yeah, like an in-depth understanding of the drum kits and the drum machines. Yeah, so that's amazing.
Cool. No, thank you. That's exactly what I wanted for you to get, right? I think a lot of the time, to look at it from a different perspective, you know, this day and age, we've got access to so much. You know, we've got access to sample packs, you know, presets in drum machine, you know, presets in Logic or Fruity Loops or Ableton. You know, we've got all this stuff that's obviously fantastic that we've got access to this stuff. But what is lost in that is actually the context and where things came from. You know, so and you really saw that, right? So a really good example is when the 808 came out, it was a product that was available in the shops, right? And depending on what you were into, you would utilize it. You know, the 808 was used in a lot of rock records actually in the early 80s, but you wouldn't know that because obviously the genre that really brought it to the fore was, you know, particularly hip hop, you know, and of course trap, you know. But the good thing about each genre kind of refines what it wants, you know. So for example, if I play you this record here, I think it's this one. Yeah, cool. This is a really, I mean, you may know this one. This is like a classic dance record. Again, it uses the 808 a lot, you know, in a really, let me just play it to you real quick. So what's interesting is that a record like this is a record that was, again, it came out in the late 80s when, you know, sampling was really significant, right, in music making. The use of drum machines really, really significant. But then the way the 808 kick drum started to morph, right? You know, so you can hear here the kind of tuned sound, that's the 808 kick drum, right? But it's been sampled and played in a particular kind of way. But the role it plays in the track, where it's this dominant bass element, has its roots in you know, in the 808 drum machine and its roots in hip hop. So again, you know, after this, I'll definitely give you guys some playlists and some resources to check out, but something to really, you know, look into. The more you kind of get into your own music production, is almost like charting the history of sounds and rhythms, because like I said, it all stems from the drum machines I showed you. And obviously every generation, every scene, every city kind of takes it on and repurposes and reworks and changes it up, and you know, we have what we have today. Okay, so are you
Tony?
guys okay? Yeah,
We have, yeah.
Right. Sorry, sorry, I just had to cut short. Sorry, I'm sorry about that. I had a question actually at the beginning when you started talking at the very beginning. I wanted to find out whether beat making is applicable to African drums as well.
That's a really, really good question. Yes, because so where do you want me to start with this? So there's two ways of looking at this, right? There is the tool, right? The drums machine, right? And you know, particularly with the you know, Lindrum, this is a really good example. So the Lindrum obviously is a drum machine that had samples in it. You could obviously change the sounds if you change the EEPROMs. So there were artists who, people like Kate Bush, Peter Gabriel, Tears for Fears, who were inspired by African rhythms. So what they were doing, they were listening to, you know, rhythms from Ghana, you know, Nigeria, you know, from Tanzania, you know, Nairobi, you know, and kind of working out what the pulses are, and then applying those kind of rhythms to drum machines. So if I play this record by a band called the Tears for Fears, what you want to listen to is you want to listen to the, again, listen to the rhythm. Tears for Fears are a band who you may know a track called Everyone Wants to Rule the World. But their first single was this track called The Way You Are. So what you're listening for is the rhythm, right? The way they've, because it's you know, what a lot of pop bands take from African rhythm is the syncopation, right? The kind of offbeat rhythms, things that kind of accent in a slightly different way. Okay, so listen to the rhythm. Let's have a look. So there's lots of examples of artists who, you know, are heavily influenced by African rhythms and African modes of movement, and incorporate that into using technology, you know, and you know, whether it's something that's really subtle, like in this case, you wouldn't hear it if you didn't think about it, right? Particularly because what's on top, you know, there's guitar, you know, there's other musical elements that are obviously other things, right? but at its heart, the rhythm is definitely West African influence for sure.
Yeah.
And this, oh, you could hear it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, for me, one thing that's really interesting about it, again, when it comes to personalizing your style of making rhythms and making beats and beat making, is kind of identifying those pulses or those positions in the not necessarily in the timeline, but in the pattern that give you those kind of rhythms and those kind of sensations. And we'll look at that in a second.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes. Sorry, just a follow-up question on what you've said. You said specifically that the beat, it's about the rhythm that drives it. What about something like a rhythm guitar? Would a melodic instrument then be able to give rhythm?
Cool. So yeah, you've said it right. A rhythm guitar. So in terms of the role that a rhythm guitar plays, a rhythm guitar complements anything else that's doing percussion. That's generating pulses. And the idea behind the rhythm guitarist is that person's responsible for guitar licks that complement whatever the percussion or your drums are doing, right? So, and again, when it comes to music production, and when you start breaking down what fascinates you first and foremost, but then actually what makes a track move and has feeling and energy, it's a really interesting exercise to really break things down. I do a lot of what I call active listening, or critical listening, where when you're listening to music, and whether you're an experienced producer or not, or someone who's just starting out, getting to really understand what you're listening to and deconstructing it. So when you listen to a piece of music, trying to identify whether, for example, the drums are acoustic or electronic or both, what's the bass, is it a synth bass, is it electric bass, is it rhythm guitar, is it a rhythm guitar, or is it a sample, what's the percussion doing, is there core in there, etc. So and then what you try to work out is where they are in volume in the track. And then also what role they play. Are they pan to the left? Are they pan to the right? Are they further back in the mix? Are they loud in the mix? So you begin to paint a picture of where rhythm, where track elements, instruments are placed in the music that you're passionate about, because that also helps inform where you place elements in your tracks, and this mix of listening in this way, understanding, like I said, in this case, the history of the drums, knowing what an 808 sounds like, knowing what a 909 sounds like, and all these things, it kind of all helps inform how you move, how you make music moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, cool. So let's, do you guys need a break? Are you okay to move on? Okay, yeah, thumbs up. Thank you,
A
James.
slight break would be nice.
A slight break would be nice. Okay. Should we do a slight break? Should we do
nice,
it's just a 5 minute break, right? Cool. So yeah, stay on the call. Just stay on the call. If you need to just turn your mic and your screen off, just do that. But stay on the call. Don't go anywhere. And we'll see. It's okay. It's 40 minutes to now. Let's come back at 45 minutes to. Okay.
Great. 5 minutes.
Cool. All right, 5 minutes. See you guys in a bit.
Guys. Lovely.
Yes, miss.
Eve. Eve, present? Are you present?
I'm here.
Present.
Great.
Present.
Yay. All
Okay.
right. Welcome back.
Everybody? Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. Okay. So what you can see here, I've got a copy of Ableton Live 10. I've got this dark skin that I like to use, but you've got exactly the same version. Just for the benefit of getting everyone on the same page, and given that everyone has different experiences with using Ableton, I just want to just give a brief overview of the screen before we kind of start delving into the whole rhythm programming side of things. So with all these tools, right, and whether it's a LinDrum, MPC, SP12, 808, 909, you know, Ableton Live 10, you know, these are all tools, right, for us to make music first and foremost, right? Particularly in the case of, you know, using a tool like Ableton, which is fantastic, super, super, super powerful. You know, it's all about working out your workflow, right? And working out what you want to learn in order to get your music made, right? It can do loads and loads of things and everyone uses it differently. So the thing to really focus on, particularly when you're learning Ableton for the first time, is almost like first principles, right? So for those of you who've used Ableton, and also for those who don't, you know Ableton is two screens, right? You've got this screen here, which is session view, and you've got this screen here, that's arrange view. Now, for me personally, when it comes to building rhythms and building ideas, I focus on session view. And the reason why I focus on session view is because Ableton is initially based on this idea of making loops, right? Whether it's 1 bar, 4 bars, 16 bars, 1 beat, you know, and the thing about rhythms is that rhythms are based on rhythm, based on repetition, based on loops, right? And how different elements interact with each other, right? And again, as I said to you early on, this idea of 1 bar, when it comes to making rhythms, most beats that we hear, particularly in dance music, are just 1 bar, right? There's colors, of course, and fills and textures, of course, and changes. But in terms of the guttural thing that moves you, it's 1 bar, right? Sometimes 2, but mostly 1 bar. And why that's really important to know is that when you're building your confidence and developing your skills when it comes to building rhythms and learning how to produce music, make rhythms, finding your identity as a beat maker, focusing on just the 1 bar and getting that rhythm right, that should be your focus, because once you've got the 1 bar right, then you can build upon it, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? And also, when you're learning early on, it's kind of less to think about. Do you know what I mean? In that case, if you're focusing on just 1 bar and really getting that right? And so that's what we're going to do. We may do ones, you know, we obviously will look at patterns that are longer than that, but it's all about 1 bar. It's all about 1 bar. It really, really is, right? So Ableton, you've got the left-hand corner here, we've got access to your sounds, right? And your instruments, which we'll look at in a second. You've got some shortcuts here, which we're not going to look at the moment. You've got your tempo at the top left-hand corner here. So in this case, it defaults to 120 BPM. We'll stay there for a while, but we'll look at tempo in a second. You've got the metronome here. You've got your play, stop, and record here, which when you're in session view, you don't need to worry about this. You only have to worry about this play, stop, and record when you're in arrange view, which we're not going to look at. And likewise with these controls here for cycling through sections, that's all about arrange view. Don't need to know that. You've got a couple of effects returns here. Ableton defaults with a reverb and delay. I've switched this out to echo because I love echo, and we're going to look at that in a second. And you've got this section here, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then in this area here, session view, you have MIDI channels and audio channels, right? We're going to use predominantly MIDI channels for instruments, right? Bringing up drum rhythm, drum racks, building some rhythms. But we'll also use these audio channels here because for doing some recording and some further processing, which we'll do a bit later. Okay. So what we're going to do now is that for the next 15-20 minutes, I'm going to basically walk you through some kind of beat making, rhythm generation tips. And then I'm going to give you some time to work on it on your own. And then in that time, while you're working on your own, make some have a piece of paper on the side for some questions or some thoughts that we can share after you've had some time. Okay, Right. So, so again, focusing on this area here, okay. You know, in Ableton, in terms of access to preset sounds and instruments that you can work with, you've got sounds here, and you've got and sounds is more about the focus on the character of the sound, right, rather than the instrument, right? So you've got ambient and evolving, bass, brass, effects, etc. So you don't care whether it's operator or impulse or you know, or electric piano. You don't care. What you care about is, I want a sound that's experimental, or I want a synth lead sound, right? When it comes to drums, which is what we're going to focus on now, there's an instrument called drum rack. If I just go to first show you drum rack first before I get to so drum rack in Ableton is your friend, this one here, right? I just wanted to show it to you, and then we'll use it on our own later. So what drum rack allows you to do, it basically has cells, and in each cell you can load a sample or an instrument, actually, you know, and it's a really good way of you customizing your own kits, right? So whether it's a sample in Ableton's library, or you've got your own samples that you found or recorded, it's a really good way of kind of creating your own drum kits, right? So I'll just show you that first at the first instance, because if I just delete that and then go back to drums, all the drum kits in Ableton's drum library are based on the drum rack, okay? And remember what we saw before the break. I showed you 808, 909, LINDRUM, MPC. I showed you these kind of things, right? So if you look in the Ableton library, you'll see the 606, 707, 808, 909, right? So for the get-go in Ableton library, you've got access to those drum machines that I mentioned, and you've got access to those sounds, okay? As well as loads and loads and loads of others, right? I mean, I've got loads in here because I've downloaded loads, right? You've also got the CR78 there, which is again a Roland drum machine. If I look further down, you've got some kits down here called DMX. You've got LD, which is the LINDRUM. Okay, so the good thing about within Ableton libraries, whether it's the stock ones or ones that you download as part of Ableton, you've got access to these packs that you can download. Let me just show you where they are. So if you go to see here, I've got categories and I've got places. So if you go to places here, there's one called drum machines and drum essentials. If you download those, they basically got loads of drum machines in there. You can see they've got 808, 909, LINDRUM, etc., etc., etc. Okay, right, which is awesome because you've got access to those, all those classic drum sounds that I mentioned. You've got access to those. All right. So let me go down to. Let me just go down to the kit one actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up the 808 kit. The way you do that in Ableton, there's a couple of ways you can load a kit. You can double click on it, and what it will do is Ableton will then create a new channel with that drum kit on a channel. Or in this case, because I've got a channel here already, in fact, let me just get rid of these just to keep things nice and simple. I'm going to click and drag this across over here. Okay, it's just loading. And again, before we even go any step forward, of course, when you download this, load an instance of it, and you can see all these cells here and all this stuff, right? Of course, if you're seeing it for the first time, it can be daunting. Don't worry about it. You don't need to know half this stuff, at least the beginning. You don't need to know it, right? All you need to know is that when you load an instance of any drum kit, right? All you need to know is that these cells here, right? And more importantly, this gray area here, these are where the sounds are, okay? Each of these cells has a sample. You've got a mute button, play button, and solo button. So mute is obviously stops it from playing. Play is obviously so you can audition it, and S is for solo if you want to just play that sound by itself. So if I hit play here, can everyone hear that? Everyone hear that?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
So that's 808 kick drum. You've got rim shot, snare drum, clap, right? And what I urge you to do is, you know, when you have time, load in each kit, even if you don't use them, because a lot of the time, you know, we hear all these sounds like, you know, what's a tom? You know, we may know what a tom is, of course, right? But you don't know a tom in the context of an 808. So if I play an 808 tom here, low tom, yeah, that's an 808 tom, right? Which sounds completely different to a LINDRUM tom. That sounds completely different to a 909 tom, right? Let's play the hi-hat, closed one, right? So that's a 808 hi-hat, closed hi-hat. That sounds completely different to a 909 one, etc., etc. So you get my point. So each drum machine has its own particular kind of character, and there's like a default sound, right? That you know, the stock sound. But you can also enhance the sound using EQ, compression, effects, and these kind of things, right? Which we can get into a bit later. So the good thing about when you load a drum kit from the drums library here in Ableton is that if we now on a channel, right, double click and create an empty pattern, right, or clip in Ableton speak, right, what Ableton does, it creates an empty 1-bar clip, right? So if I move my mouse down to the middle here, click, drag up, so you can see the sounds that are available. Because I used a drum kit, right, a drum rack based drum kit, Ableton will give the names of the sounds here at my disposal, right? So I can see, so if I program from here, I know exactly the sounds I can choose and what's at my disposal, all right? So before I get going and start programming, what I need to do first of all is see this little icon here, which is a headphone icon. That's like an audition icon. What that allows me to do in a similar way that when I press the play button on the drum rack and audition each of the sounds, this does exactly the same thing, but on these on this stave. So I've got that. Exactly, right? So that is the classic 808 drum kit, all based on in samples, right? So let's begin programming. So the first thing to, and again, I'll mention this whole thing about 1-bar loop again, right? Because it's all about the 1-bar loop. And the great thing about the 1-bar loop is that in 4/4, right? And 4/4 is if I press the metronome, right, and press the space bar to play, right? Oops. Right? If you have a listen to that metronome, right, you'll hear that. Let me make it a bit more obvious. Sorry, I'll use a different sound. Right? Right, you'll hear obviously the high pitched note is the 1, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. We know that, right? We know that in terms of rhythm. So that's 4/4 rhythm, right? So the good thing about 4/4 and most music we listen to, most contemporary music, most dance floor music is based on 4/4. So you can guarantee 99% of the time this will work. There are tracks that use different time signatures and time signature changes, of course, yes. But 9 times out of 10, it's going to be in 4/4, right? So the good thing about this is that in 4/4, a 1-bar loop has got 16 steps, right? Or you can see here, you've got this gray area here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And obviously depends on the resolution you're at, but this resolution is that you've got 16 steps in 1 bar, right? Now, what that means for us is that when you're when you're discovering and programming beats, you know, being really confident with what happens in these 16 steps is what helps define the kind of rhythms that you can make. Of course, like I said earlier, you can expand on this, make things 2 bars, 4 bars, 16 bars, add changes and fills and all that stuff. Of course you can. But in the first instance, just this whole idea of 1 bar and getting that sounding great is the way to go, right? Let me give you some examples. So this kick drum here, right? I'm just gonna basically go 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So that is basically 99% of all the dance music you listen to in your life, pretty much, right? Let me explain what I mean. If I hit the space bar, you can see that the numbers are going up here, right? And if I had the metronome on, the metronome would play, right? But in Ableton, in order for a clip to play, you can see there's a play button here, right? So if I just hit the metronome, so you can just hear the metronome, right? And the good thing about Ableton, in its default setup, is that the screen, this session view, is quantized to 1 bar, as in terms of when clips play and stop. What that means is that when you hit play here, this play button, on the next one, so if I hit now, it'll go 3 and it'll start. So the reason why this is really important to know is that when you're building rhythms and building ideas in Ableton, particularly in session view, it's a really good way of kind of when you can have different clips playing off each other and different sections of your track. It means that when you hit play on that clip, it will play on the next musical one if you want. You can change it if you want, but in the large part, most of the time you want something to come in 1, 2, 3, 4 breakdown, or 1, 2, 3, 4 chorus, right? The same way if you're DJing and you're beat mixing, you're going from one track to another, you're you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, begin the fade or whatever, you know. A lot of the time with music, knowing where the 1 is where we change things, whether you're in a band, live band, using Ableton, this is no different. So the good thing about this is that if I press spacebar, and then I hit this play button, watch what happens. The play button will flash, and then it will basically start playing the rhythm, right? 1, 2, see it, flash. Right, just take the click off because it gets a bit annoying, right? So that kick drum, as you know, it could be the beginning of a house record. It could be a house club. It could be a Miami bass record. It could be the beginning of so many different dance records, right? But 4 to the floor, that's what it is, right? You've got a kick drum on every beginning of every measure in 4/4. That's it. That's it, basically, right? Now, if I wanted to build upon this, right? There's so much I could do with this, but just think about this. This is 4 to the floor, right? And it's 4 to the floor at 120 BPM. 120 BPM is a reasonable tempo for a kind of mid-tempo dance record, right? I could make this faster if I just basically make the tempo a bit faster. So let me take it up. Yeah, that's 130. That's 100. That could be kind of garage, UK garage vibes. 140 maybe, right? And obviously it depends on what I do with other elements to give more of an indication of the rhythm. But my point being is that the tempo of your track also dictates the mood of it and the feeling of it, and also in case depending on where you place the other elements, what drives people. Equally, if I take this down to say 90 BPM, which is kind of like it could be like a slow hip hop tempo, or it could be a slow ballad, it could be a slow soul record, it could be, it's got a different mood, right? Just because it's a slower track. So the tempo of your track is also as important as the rhythm, right? Depending on the moods that you want to create, depending on the application of the rhythm, is the track for the dance floor. Is it for a kind of a slow R&B slow jam? Is it for a drum and bass inspired track? Is it a breakbeat inspired track? Right? Each having some kind of ballpark figure for the tempo is a good as a good starting point. It doesn't have to be the end all, of course, but in terms of a direction that you want to go in, it helps to know the kind of ballpark figure, because it also influences where you place the rest of the elements when you build it, right? So I'm going to put this back to 100. Let me put this 122, whatever, right? So I play this here, right? And again, let's get back to this 4/4 thing. So what's also good about 4/4, right, is that again with rhythm programming, just by changing one of those notes changes the rhythm completely, right? So if I change the third one and bring it back forward a 16th, hear what happens now. Yeah, it's gone away from that kind of like, you know, four to the floor kind of monotonous kick, and now it's something almost like a bit more groovy, right? Because I've moved one note a 16th before, right? Likewise, if I move that back and then move it later, see what happens again. Again, that's just one note I've moved a 16th later or a 16th earlier, and it's just completely changed the whole mood of the rhythm, right? So that's something to also really take into account when it comes to beat making and the rhythm generation. You know, knowing or becoming familiar with where certain elements are placed in the clip obviously dictates the vibe of the rhythm, right? And I'll do that again differently. So I'll put this back there. Another tip, I'm going to get to the 808 to the, I'm going to get the hi-hat here, closed hi-hat, right? So there's difference. So there's closed and there's open, right? We'll look at that in a second. But in the first instance, I'm going to put this here, right? And notice I didn't even have to think about it because I've done this about 5 million times in my life. And I know that this is going to be an off hi-hat, right? Just to where it's placed. And I know that because I know visually where it needs to be. It needs to be on the third one along for every one of these. That sounds really technical. But let's have a listen to what it sounds like. You'll know it already. Yeah, so that again, it could be the beginning of a house record or whatever you want to. You've heard that in a million records, right? So again, for me, and if you think about it, when it comes to rhythm elements, you know, a drum machine takes its influence from a drum kit, right? Where the kick drum is the low pulse, right? And then you've got the hi-hats, which are the kind of things that help support the rhythm. And it's usually closed when the hi-hat's closed or open when it's open. And you've got toms. They're all based on the drum kit, right? But we've got the possibility of totally doing what we want. You know, we don't have to. The kick drum doesn't have to be played, have the role of the kind of dominant low pulse. We can if we want, of course, because it helps and everyone, we know it as human beings, but it doesn't have to be the case because we've got access to different ways of working. You know that. Anyway, let me get to, I'm going to put one hi-hat in here, open hi-hat, this one here, right? And then let's hear this now. Okay. And again, what's good about this is I move the open hi-hat stay there. It's got a different vibe. Okay. And let me do the same trick with the kick drum. I'll move the kick drum third one a 16th before. See how it sounds now. Okay. Now it's kind of a bit more skippy, right? Because I've moved to move the third one. Right. Let's move that later. Okay, you get the idea, right? So the thing about this is that it's, programming rhythms and getting to know where, what happens if you say place the, hi-hat on every third, or where you place a hi-hat, or where you place open, I should say. Equally, what I can do is, let me just move a couple more kick drums, actually. I'll do this one here. Okay, I quite like that. So let me keep that rhythm as my kind of benchmark rhythm, right? And the good thing about using session view and using Ableton in this way, because this one bar loop is just looping, right? I can just, if I was working with an artist or if I'm a singer myself or MC, this is just looping. I don't have to think about, my track is 3 minutes long or 5 minutes long, or what's going to happen in a breakdown, what's going to happen. It's just looping as long as you've got power. And obviously you can hear the music, it will just loop forever, right? So it means that you're just playing, You can experiment. You can, in this case, I could try different moving some of these events in different places just to get a sense of it. And likewise, I'm going to do that now. I'm going to hit Option on my keyboard, click on the clip, drag down. I'm going to make this one a slightly different color so we know it's different. Right. So this is the green one, right? The red one's playing. You can see that because of the play button's playing, but the green one's not playing yet. So I can do some stuff in here. So I'm going to add a snare on the 2 and 4, right, which is there and there, right? Just to keep something simple, and that's not playing yet, right? But if I hit the play button here, watch what happens. Again, Ableton's like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So I hit the play button, 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Okay, so again, because it's Ableton, it'll just loop and loop and loop and loop and loop until I want it to do otherwise, right? So I can go back to the other one, 2, 3, and. Okay, so the good thing about this is I'm only using 2, 3 elements, right? I've got a kick drum, a closed hi-hat, and an open hi-hat. Why this is important is because a lot of the time, when you start deconstructing rhythms in the music, a lot of the time it's maximum, obviously this is a bit of a grand statement, but maximum 8 elements, really 10. Of course, you've got other stuff going on, maybe rhythm guitar and shakers, of course, you've got other stuff. But the crux of the rhythm is 8 elements, 10 elements at most, right? So why this is important is because when it comes to developing rhythms, just focus on what moves you, what excites you, right? So this 808, I'm going to build on this a little bit more. Okay, so I've got the green one, which is this, right? But what I'm going to do is, again, in a similar way to the kick drum, where I move the kick drum a couple of measures, right? To make this a little bit more funky, I'm going to move the snares in a similar way, right? So I'm going to push this, I'm going to put that one there, put that one there. Let's see what it sounds like now. I'm going to add a couple more. Yes, I'll keep that. It's quite nice. In fact, let me just move this here. Cool, I quite like that. So it's almost like Force of the Floor, but a bit funky, right? And again, let me copy this. I go Alt, drag down, make this a different color so you can see it. And with this now, I'm gonna. So let me just take a step back. So at the moment, my track is 122 BPM. I've got this rhythm going on, and so I'm saying to myself, this could be something that's a bit dance floorish, right? It's got this kind of almost tribal vibe to it, maybe. Don't know yet, but it's kind of feeling that way, right? So, and not that you always have to think about dance floor all the time, but if you're making music for the dance floor, there are certain rules. The track has to be, well, it doesn't have to be super fast, but has to have energy. It needs to make people dance. And obviously you can play with different timings, but ultimately each genre has a kind of ballpark tempo that it works to, right? You can obviously vary it. Of course you can do what you want, in fact. But of course, if you want a track to move people, a track that has some energy and a particular kind of tempo does matter. So at this point in time, I would make a decision. I'd be like, okay, where do I want to go with this track? Do I want to make something that's kind of dance floor, or do I want to make it a bit more head nod, boom bap, hip hop style? Or do I make something that's kind of slow house, 110 chuggy kind of thing, kind of dub techno inspired thing, again, 100 BPM kind of vibe? Again, I'll just mentally think about this because it helps with the direction that you're going to go in terms of how the other elements play, right? And the reason I mention that is because, say, for example, if I play this one here, right, I'm going to change the hi-hats now. I'm going to add some more and make it a bit busier, right? So if I play this one now, Right, so it's a bit lame now. So let's just make it a bit more. Yeah, that's something else, right? So by adding more hi-hats is obviously giving the track more energy, right? Or I could go straight up and just give it what we call straight 16ths, which is basically when you do this. This is straight 16ths. I'm going to keep the hi-hats in there. So straight 16ths is a guaranteed way to kind of make it track have instant energy. Yeah, cool. So the rhythm, the role that each element plays in a track is really crucial, right? Let me just get a couple more elements into this. So I've got in terms of clips, I've got the red one. It's kind of like the beginning, right? And I've got the yellow one. Yeah, and I've got the green one. Cool. This is again another vibe, right? And then what I could do is I'll make one more. Okay, actually I'll make two more if you don't mind. Let me make this one this color. And then with this one, I'm going to add some toms, right? So one thing that's really good about working in this way is that if I program this rhythm and I'm happy with where it's going, but I want to get some kind of inspiration, right? And toms are a really good way of doing it, particularly with 808 toms, because we kind of know them. So I find the tom, I go this one, that sound, and this one, right? So I'm just going to place them in different kind of places, right? So I'm going to go here. There you go. Yeah, so that was just me listening to the groove, placing them in places that I thought were interesting, right? And because of the way I've placed them, and because of the rhythm, it feels kind of syncopated, right? And if I wanted to go, if I add, no, not that one, cool, okay, so that's kind of cool, right? I kind of like that rhythm. It's got some movement to it, it's got some vibes to it. I'm going to create one more, and that's based on this blue one here. So I'm going to go control, drag down here. I'm going to go change this color. Make this one, I've got a yellow one already. Let's go to orange. Now, what's a really good thing to think about as well is that, in this idea that less is more, I could get rid of an element. So in this case, I'll just get rid of the kick drum, and that kind of creates like a breakdown. Okay, so if I play the blue one, yeah, and then I play the orange one, the kick drum is gone, and it's like yeah, and I could go back to the blue one, 2, 3, and okay, cool. So you get the idea. And the good thing about one bar loops is that it's the groove, right? You get an idea, you get a sense of what's happening, you get a sense of the rhythm and the movement, and that's what's kind of driving us. If I wanted to, embellish on these rhythms, I can, maybe copy them, extend them, add some other colors, particularly, for example, if I knew this was a verse section or a bigger section, I could obviously make it bigger and then add some accents, as I would like. But in the first instance, what working to one bar does, it just gives me an instant touch point for the baseline rhythm that I wanted to create. Okay. So before I give you a little bit of time to try this out for yourself, I just wanted to show you one other thing to think about. So if I go into, I'll copy this blue one. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to make this this color actually. And let me name it, right? So to name a clip in Ableton, you hit Command and R. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to call this a vel, and I'll tell you why I'm calling it vel for a minute. So is that vel or velk? That's it, velocity, right? So I'm going to show you something that's a little, it's not super advanced, but again, it's something to really be mindful of when you're creating rhythms, and particularly when you're working with, kind of like hi-hats, and when you're working with, when you want to create accents within a clip, right? So with this kind of lime green one I've got here, you can see that if I just bring this window up, I go up here, bring this up so you can see it. And again, the great thing about Ableton is that windows are scalable, right? So you'll see here, you've got access to my pattern that I created, okay? And then I've got the sounds, I can see the sounds, right? And then at the bottom here, I've got this little section here. So this section is the velocity or the loudness of each of the notes, right? So if I bring my mouse and bring it to here, drag this up, I can see the velocities of each of the notes. So when you program notes in this way, it defaults the tempo to what's known as 100. Velocity in MIDI world goes from 1 to 127. The reason why it's 127 because it's all based on binary. But all you need to know is 127 is the loudest, 1 is the quietest, right? And it averages out at 100. So this is why these are all here, right? Now, something that's really cool about velocities, working with velocity, particularly with drum sounds, particularly with hi-hats, is that you can create really, in addition to the actual where you place the notes, you can also create movement and groove by the velocities of each of these, right? So let me just play this one so you can hear it, right? And as you can hear, all the hi-hats are kind of very, very in your face, right? But if I just mess with them a little bit, so I just put this one down there, this one down here, this one I'll make a bit louder, this one here I'll take down, this one here I take down, this one here I take down, this one up. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Needs to do that. Take that down. Oops, sorry. Take this hi-hat up, this one down, this one, that's not that, sorry, this one here, that down, this one up. Oops, sorry, that's both of them, sorry. It does get a bit fiddly sometimes. There you go. This one, that's that. I'm going to take it down actually. And then this one high up, and then this one quieter, right? So hear how it sounds, right? Now that I've done some velocity riding with the velocities on the hi-hat, see what happens to the rhythm, right? I'll play you the blue one first so you can hear what it sounded like before, right? So that's that one, right? And then hear this one, difference, 1, 2, 3, and. Can you hear the difference? All right, I'll play the blue one again. 3 and. Then the left one. Yeah. So by changing the velocities of the hi-hats, what it's doing is it's almost like the drummer going like kind of a light one, high accent, kind of by varying the loud and quiet notes, you're again giving this sense of groove and rhythm, right? And that's something to really bear in mind when it comes to building rhythms, this mix of where you place the notes, and in particular with things like the hi-hat or the shakers, where you how you can change the velocities of the notes to again support the rhythm and give it some extra groove if that's something that you want. Okay. Any questions on this?
There was a question in the chat from Janice, but I don't know if you feel it's been answered right now. She'd asked what exactly you mean by 1 bar. Yeah.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
No, it's
okay.
So,
yeah, I got in the zone, right. So that's a really good question. So in music, in the musical terms, it's a portion of time, right? So when we count, right? So when we count, we go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a bar. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3. That's a bar, right? That's what that 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So typically with music, you're a singer. You said you're a singer. So typically, and this is obviously a very broad strokes, but a verse could be 16 bars long or 32 bars, right? Or the bridge is 8 bars long. Going to the chorus, that's 16 bars long, right? So a bar is like a measure of time. Typically in 4/4, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, that amount of time. But also it depends on the tempo, right? Because if the tempo of the track is slow, right? If it's like that, yeah, it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So this is it'd be a very general terminology, and there's different ways of, measuring that. But on average, generally speaking, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, and that 1, 2, 3, 4 is a bar, and we measure our music sections in bars, so you might have, say, an 8-bar intro, right? You may have a 16-bar verse. You may have a 16-bar solo for a choral player. These are measurements of time in a track, right? And why this is useful, I just want to jump quickly. Why this is relevant is because if I just quickly take one of these clips and I move it over to a range view, right? Let me just make sure that I'm on the right. Yeah, it's on the right one. Okay, let me just move this back. Why this is relevant is because when we start mapping out our track in terms of music, right? You kind of need to know. We use bars as a way of measuring where we are in time, right? So, for example, if I get this loop here, if I just take this out and move this to here, right? So we can say that, in fact, let me just do it a better way. I'm going to move this over here, and then I'm going to go to get the first one, right? And I'll move the first one to the beginning here, right? So and then let me do that. Actually, I'll do like this. So the reason why bars are important is because it helps us understand the arrangement of our track. So you can see here that the red is happening for 4 bars, and then it goes into the next pattern, vel, at bar 5, right? So if I play this from here, right, you'll hear 1, 2, 3, 4, then it switches 3 and. Yeah. So the bar is the basic measure of time that we use for, when we're building and arranging our tracks, but also from our point of view, in terms of building rhythms, again, why using a 1 bar to build rhythms is a good starting point, is basically because you can hear already just with 1 bar, you've got a sense of the groove, right? You've got a sense of how the track should be just with 1 bar. And of course you can add other elements. You can obviously add different percussion elements, which of course you can do that, but it's just a really, really good starting point. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Great.
Okay.
Super.
So I have a question.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm using the right words. In the clips,
Yes. Yep.
On the clips, right?
Yes. Clips,
I noticed you duplicated, or is it copied? Is it? Is that important? Like, is it important to copy copy the clips, or is it, or should you create, or is it okay to create new ones as you go? Or is it important to stick to that one?
That's a really good question, actually. The answer to that is there's no rules, right? There's no rules. I'm going on the basis that my songwriting process, it works on building, right? You know, so if you listen to, that's a really good question. You know, so a lot of the time, particularly with dance music, right, or with any kind of rhythms, it's built on layers. You know, so usually you'll have a track that starts off with something quite simple, right, and then it builds, right. You add another section, or in the chorus you add a clap. You know, might have a breakdown section, but it's all based on the kind of on the foundations, right? You know, in fact, most of the music we listen to has a foundation. So what, by having one clip and then copying that and adding to it, I'm basically building on the foundations, right? So across my track, the rhythm will have a consistency. Of course, it's peppered with new nuances, right? But it's all based on the same groove, right? Of course, I don't have to, I don't have to do that at all, right? I could do something now that's, you know, for example, just off the top of my head, I'll just do this. I'll just create something completely different, right? I'll just do something completely random, whatever, just this. I'll put a kick drum here. I'll put that there, that there, that there, that there, whatever, right? Sometimes it's good to do this, right? Yeah, don't think I'm doing this because it's just random. I'm just doing it, right? Let me put this here and that there, right? I don't know what it sounds like, right? Let's just hear what it sounds like. So that is this, right? Which is actually quite dope in the right setting, right? But after if I play this, right, and then I go into that one. Let's hear what it sounds like. 1, 2, 3, and yeah. So that could, if it was for a dance floor, it could skip people off. You know, it could. Or what I would do, I'd actually work with it. I'd actually maybe use it like a breakdown. You know, so I might have or create a different section when you go from section A to section B. So to answer your question, it really depends on your workflow. You know, what you want to do and how you want to build rhythms. You know, there's definitely no harm in creating different clips, all building from scratch. Of course, it doesn't matter. I guess the trick is how you connect it all in a tune. You know, and how you get it all to fit. Because at the end of the day, when we perform or when you make tracks, a tracks is a story, right? You have a beginning, middle, and an end. You know, however you build it up, you're creating a story, and you create that story with rhythm. You create it with bass. You know, all of your voice. You know, so the way you can build, particularly with rhythm, is to start off with something simple to start off with and build from it. You know, but it all has the same pulse, right? So that's kind of where my thinking comes from. But by all means, you don't have to do that. Cool, but great question. Thank you. Great. Cool. Do you guys want a little bit of time to try? And well, first of all, are you guys okay to hang out for a little bit longer? Hello.
Yeah, I know what happened.
We're just giving you thumbs up.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I'm good. I'm good to hang out somewhere. I'm having a good time.
Good.
Great.
Yeah, just I feel that, you know, it'd be good to just show you a few more things. So do you want a little bit of time to just try this out for yourself, and then we can just talk through what your experience was, and if you've got any questions or if there's anything technical that you want to go through or anything that you kind of struggled with. Yeah, let's spend it's 35 minutes to now. Let's just spend you know 10 minutes just working on our own. Just trying this out. So, you know, start off with just one, and you can see it's all 1 bar loop. You know, start with a kick. It doesn't have to, you know, use the 808 if you want, because it makes, you know, well, I've been using that, but by all means, use another kit if you want. And then just build a rhythm. Start with the kick drum, because the kick drum is a good place to start because it's the foundation. You don't have to, but because a lot of the rhythms we are accustomed to, the kick drum is like the pulse. It helps to ground your rhythm if you start with the kick drum, but it's not exclusive. You don't have to do that. And then copy that clip add some more elements, copy it again, and then just create some variations and just have fun with it. Okay?
Cool. So we have 10 minutes break to experiment.
Music break, yeah, experiment break.
Music
yeah,
break.
experiment break.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, music, yeah.
No sleeping. Team, no sleep.
Cool.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right.
Of course, and if you have any pressing questions, just ask me. I'll be online for you. So if you've got a question, but please make the time. I'd rather you make the time, make some questions on a piece of paper or make a mental note of them, so we can all share them in one fell swoop after the 10 minutes.
Okay.
Little checkbox in the bottom left-hand corner to share the audio to.
What is that? Wait, let me just 1 second. I am lost. Is it on the Zoom or is it like on my Ableton?
Should be
so
on
it's two
Zoom,
things.
yeah?
Yeah, it should be on Zoom. Yeah.
Okay. Wait.
Can you see where your mic is?
Yeah.
Is that where it is? There's a little arrow.
Yeah, I've seen a little arrow.
And then there's like.
Just give me a minute.
Select a speaker, select a speaker. Just try one of those. It's not there.
No, it's not there.
There's a Zoom expert when you need one.
Oh wait, yeah, I think I found it. Just give me a minute.
Sure
I
thing.
think so. Let me see.
Which screen did you share?
I was sharing the Ableton, my Ableton screen.
No. What you do is if you hit stop sharing, share the desktop. Because sometimes it goes blank sometimes. So if you stop sharing and then you reshare, then share the desktop. Yeah.
Okay, let me try again.
Yeah.
Desktop. Oh wait. Share sound. Share screen. And then share. Can you hear anything now?
We can hear the music. Yeah, can hear the music.
Okay. Okay, let me just. Then let me start it again. Can you hear something?
Yes.
That's what I've made.
Sounds cool.
But now I've lost something.
Okay, so first things first. Can you hit on your keyboard? Can you hit the tab?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you hit tab on your keyboard, it will switch back to session view. Or there you go. Cool. Okay, so what we've got here. So when you say lost, what have you lost?
At some point I was trying to find some shakers. I couldn't find shakers, and then I decided just to go back and use the 808 core kit, and then I lost one beat. I think I lost this beat. But then now when I press that, everything plays together as opposed to just one of them playing.
Okay. So we can see. Right. Okay. There's a couple of things going on there. If you can see, so what's happened is that because you went to a range view, Ableton's getting a bit confused, right? Because so a range view and session view have played different roles in terms of what plays, right? But then also, there's obviously different ways of working, but the way I work is that you do session view to do the building, and then you transfer all your ideas to arrange view, right? Because it also helps mentally for me as well, just in terms of, okay, my sketch pad is session view, or I'm performing, right? And then when I'm getting to the deep arrangement side of things, I move over, right? So if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, where you know the master column, the very last column?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you bring your mouse down, right, to the square, can you see this? Yes, bring your mouse down.
Wait. Oh, I need to. Which square?
Where can you see that?
Oh,
blue,
this little, yeah.
No, sorry, red icon. Yeah, that. Press that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that should stop. Press it again. Yeah, good. So that stopped all your clips, right?
Okay.
Now,
yeah.
If you go, bring your mouse up to number 1.
Okay.
You see number 1, the play button by number
there,
1.
The master?
Yeah. Play the play
okay.
button on number 1. Play that one. Hit the play button.
Okay.
Yeah, play that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's the one you wanted to play, right? No?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So are these, so if you hit stop a minute. Okay, cool. So each of these patterns that you've created, are they all variations?
Yes. There's just 2 different beats, yeah? So
they're two different beats, but they're the same.
2.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So why did you copy? What was your thinking when you copied? When you made more instances of the 808? Was that because you wanted to have what was your reasoning? Why didn't you put all the clips in one 808 kit?
2 things. The first one is that I was trying to move it. I saw you move the samples to the arrangement view. And I think I was trying to do that so that I can see it and copy.
Okay.
Yeah. Then so that's what happened. Yeah.
Cool. So what's happened is because you didn't move the clip all the way over, Ableton has thought, oh, okay, you want a duplicate of this kit. That's why you've got to, So the way round that would be just to, move the clip that's playing at the moment into the 808 kit that's on the left. Do you know what I mean? So
come again.
So the clip that's playing at the moment, the one that's got the green play button.
Yes, this one.
Yeah.
Or is this one?
Move your mouse. Move your mouse slightly so you click and hold. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Drag to the left. Drag that clip to the left.
And put it there.
You can put it there. Yep, you can put it there.
Yeah. Okay. Or I can put it there, like one.
Yeah. Or there. Yeah. Wherever you want. Yeah. Because they're all the same. Same drum kit, 808 kit. Then, you kind of want them all from the same one. Unless you wanted to make something drastically different. Let's say, for example, you wanted to have the same pattern, but you want it to sound different, like you want to put like a effect on it or something, then you would do that. Yeah. So sometimes you have to just be careful when you're moving clips around, because Ableton has almost got like a mind of its own sometimes. But the rhythm you created sounds dope. No, sounds cool.
Thank you. I was actually working from the moment you opened your Ableton. I was trying to follow through.
Okay.
So I was
cool.
Yeah.
But you can see there, like even with the toms that you've got there, it's very tom heavy, which is great. 808 got fantastic toms. Almost sounds very African, but by nature, from what you've created.
Yeah.
And also something to bear in mind as well. I mean, we'll listen to some other clips that people have done. Again, one thing I really like about this whole 1 bar loop thing is that, for example, if you're an MC or a vocalist, you could use that as the basis of a song, because again, when in terms of the role that a rhythm plays in a track, a rhythm, it holds down the groove, right? So if you've got say a vocalist or a singer or a poet, that's the thing that's going to drive people through. Do you know what I mean? And then the rhythm is just accompanying the rest of the music. So sometimes so this is why this whole 1 bar thing is really useful, because if you're thinking about working with other musicians, the 1 bar just holds the rhythm down while you consider what else is happening. And then of course you can refine the rhythm based on what's happened, if that makes sense. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, though. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Who was struggling with it?
I was. Somehow I couldn't even play the clip. I don't know
Share your
what.
screen.
Let me see. Okay. Share screen. Ableton, yeah.
No, just desktop.
Okay.
There you go. Cool. Yeah. Okay.
You can see that.
Yep, we can see it.
I was just. Can you hear it as well?
Not yet. Is it playing?
So I was trying to press this play.
Yeah, it's playing. Yeah.
But I couldn't hear anything, and then
Okay.
I checked here. Let's see. I had some. Okay, great. So I have to draw them in myself.
Yeah, you can draw them in yourself. I mean, can you hear it at your end?
Yeah, I can now. I can. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was just wondering. Yes. Okay. I think I got it.
You got it now. Yeah, cool. So yes. So drawing the notes in yourself is, yeah, definitely, one way of, well, I recommend doing it yourself, because what's really good about building rhythms in this way is that because it's very visual, you begin to see, it's almost like you can see rhythm, you can see what it looks like. You'll get to see these common patterns, particularly when you're dealing with just one bar. And again, particularly in yourself, because you're a vocalist, right? It's just a really good way, get one clip, get a kick, snare, hi-hat going, or whatever instruments you want. And that one bar is the basis. Then you can go, okay, you know what? Let me just let it loop for a while. Let me get some lyrics and melody going, and you'll find that the one bar just can carry your track, at least in the initial writing stages, and then if you write your track, you'll begin to hear where you can accent, add a snare or add a crash cymbal or whatever, because again, you can almost like, almost look at do it like a call and response. Have initial one bar loop, get it running, write a verse, a melody idea, get a body to your track, get a verse going or chorus going or whatever, and then you can almost then write additional rhythm parts in response to the melody that you've created for the track. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Got time for one more?
Yeah, I can share.
Yes, no.
How do I start this?
Oh, the screen share?
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Any more questions, guys? I think I saw one question from one of our guests. We have some guests watching this session, and he asks, my screen has disappeared. 1 second. Sorry. There we go. What elements do we use to draw a listener's ear to your music? So I guess this is probably a personal question. Maybe we can direct that to you. Yeah, personally, what do you throw into your tunes when you're
Cool. That's a really good question. I think it depends. It depends on it depends. The beautiful thing about music is that so many different kinds of things move us, whether it's whether it's a melodic element, but because we're talking about beat making, and because we're talking about programming, for me, the things that draw people in are either things that are really repetitive in a melodic way, if that makes sense, right? You know, or something that's really driving home, really driving home, and almost like really draws people in. But also, with that said, let me just share my screen real quick with you guys again. Oh, I can't start sharing. Oh,
Malkia is sharing at the moment.
oh, okay, yeah. So, oh, okay.
Sorry,
So
Malkia made some stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Malkia,
All right,
are
so
you
what
gonna?
we'll do is, yeah. So I'll answer the question in a little bit more detail once I get back to sharing my screen. But yeah, Malkia, let's hear what you got.
Cool. All right.
Cool. Let's see. Can you guys hear it?
Yep.
So just a bit.
There you go.
Guys, we're gonna make a beat club. What is this? Wow.
Oh.
Well,
there you go.
yeah,
Nice.
we were looping it. We were getting drawn in. We were getting drawn in. That's awesome. You dropped the sonic. You jumped the sonic gun then, which is good. Now I'm glad you kind of looked at a melodic element. But one thing that's really good for you to see, and for everyone to see, right? That notice that once the melodic element came in, it's almost like your attention was less. Not that we were noticing that the beat was one bar, right? But notice when the melody came in, it all kind of made sense, right? Everything was driving along. And the fact that the beat was one bar didn't matter, right? What mattered was we were engaged. The melodic element was taking our attention, the beats supporting that, right? And then obviously the track can go in lots of different places if it wanted to. But the fact is the beat is one bar. That's it, And of course you can embellish on it, create breakdowns and all that kind of stuff, of course. But at its crux, it's one bar. Okay.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but it's awesome. It's really awesome. Cool. Okay, so I just want to show you a couple. I want to show you, if it's okay with you guys, I want to show you a couple more things to think about.
Yes, please.
Cool. So let me go here. Make sure that's on. Share. Go back here. Wicked. Okay. So let me think about this now. Right, good. So the good thing about, and I'm glad, some of you looked at other kits as well, which is great, right? The good thing about, again, working with Ableton is that, and this is something that I would recommend as well, is that the good thing about using the general kits, like the kits that are called Kit 808, 909, whatever, if you use kits that are from the same family, the sounds are mapped in exactly the same way. So the kick is always on the C1, the snare is always on D1, etc., etc. And why that's useful is because you can do things like this, right? You can I can go here. In fact, let me just duplicate this so I've got it. And to duplicate a channel, you just do Command D, click on the top, right? Let me just hit stop here. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna just delete this kit completely. Okay, and then drop in, say a 909, right? So that's this one here. Drop this in here. So now I've got exactly the same rhythm, right? Elements, but I'm using a 909, right? So now this is like a, yeah, and then that one. Yeah, you get the idea, right? As opposed to them sounding like an 808, which is this one. Yeah, so notice how the different drum machine has a completely different feel, or as in tonal quality to it and mood based on a different kit, right? So that's the 909 version. Yeah, and then that's and then 808 version, right? Right. I'll do that one more time. I'll do it with the Lin drum. And the LINDRUM will sound completely different to this as well. Just do that, get rid of that. So the LINDRUM in the Ableton is called the LD Core Kit, right? So I go here, play this one, stop this, right? And this is the completely kind of different vibe, right? So one thing that's useful when you're building rhythms as well, sometimes as just to get a different perspective, is to swap out, you know, either copy the kit, copy the channel, change the kit, and see what happens. Because sometimes the sounds, because they're different sounds, it has a completely different kind of feel, right? Cool. Let me just get back to, let's delete that. Just wanted to show you that. So a couple of things before we call it a day, or final questions and call it a day, is particularly with, again, the great thing about using Ableton, particularly when you're using it in this context, okay, is that we've to take a step back, we've got a kit, right? And a kit's got 16 sounds, right? What you can also do is when you're building ideas and when you want to just get a different kind of inspiration, right? And what I mean by that is that if I play this beat, right, that's obviously got the kick, it's got the snare, it's got a hi-hat. What I can do is just to get some different vibe, I could obviously make a pattern, get rid of a note, see what it sounds like. But what I can do here, if I open, let me just close this to get some more screen real estate. This triangle here, if I open that up, that gives me access to each of the sounds in that kit, all 16 sounds. I could change the volume, I could route it to a different place if I wanted. But what's good about it here is that I can mute, I can turn them off and on, switch them, the channels off and on, right? So if I play this, right, you can see I've got the kick playing, I've got the hi-hat, I've got the toms, right? So if I wanted to just create a breakdown, kick drum gone, bring it back, 2, 3, and yeah. So if I wanted to have a little jam, like say for example, I'm on stage or I'm in the studio with some people and I just wanted to use the same rhythm, but just vibe on bringing things in and out like a DJ, I could do that very, very easily, right? I could do it with my mouse, but also because Ableton is awesome, you can map those switches to keys, right? So in the top right-hand corner here in Ableton, you've got key and you've got MIDI. What these allow you to do is they allow you to map either your computer keyboard notes, or if I had a MIDI keyboard, like a MIDI keyboard, do you know what I mean by MIDI keyboard? If I had one of those with some pads or even keys, I could use that. Let me use my computer keyboard for now, just to show you what you can do with this. So if I hit key, right, anything that's kind of gray, I can switch off and on, I can toggle, right? So I'm going to go to this note here. Actually, let me just, cool, snare, hi-hat, cool. I'll just do the 3 of them at the moment. So this button here, which is the on and off button for the kick, I'm going to assign to letter Q, right? The snare, I'm going to do to letter W. And then the hi-hat, I'm going to do to letter E, right? So what that means, I'll come out of that. And what that means, every time I press the letter Q, see that it goes off and on, see that? It mutes that kick drum. Every time I press W, mutes that one, right? So, oops, sorry. Why this is useful is because, again, one thing that's really brilliant about Ableton is this performative aspect of working with it, right? And when you're, along with building rhythms and building elements, you can map switches, you can map top buttons to either, you know, a toggle button, push buttons, or to encoders, right? So let me now play the rhythm, right? And then what I can do is I can jam along. I'll press Q, Q, right? Q again, out, W, Q, E, Q, and W, You get the idea, right? So what you can do is you can, and what's good about this is that you can have a, say, a bass rhythm, and you can map some notes to some keys to mute things in and out. So you can add this kind of performative aspect to your rhythm. And you could record that. I could record that if I wanted, and add that into a clip if I wanted, or into the arrange page if I wanted. So the good thing about Ableton is, along with programming beats, you can add these, you know, performative or dynamic aspects to your programming, right? And it kind of changes your, you know, particularly when you add performative elements to your tracks and to your clips. It adds, it's almost like if you were DJing it, do you know what I mean? Or if you had equipment on stage and you're, you know, going from one pattern to another on a drum machine, it makes it really kind of dynamic, and adds kind of, it has this possibility to add energy, right? Cool. Okay, one more thing before we call it a day is that yeah, okay, cool. Let me go into, let me just bring this up again. So we've used this kit, created some variations, and if I go into, say, this one, you can see there's, you know, particularly with this one, I did some velocity switching, right, to make the hi-hat have a bit more, to make it a bit more dynamic. Now, say for example, now what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a fill for, and a fill is, as you know, is a programming that suggests change is coming or suggests something is happening, right? And I want that to happen at the end of, say, 4 bars, or at the end of 8 bars, right? What I could do is I could copy this. Let me just move this down. Copy this vel one. I'll call this vel fill, right? In my mind, right? And if I go to, and I'll make it a slightly different color, say that color, all right? Just so we know it. I'll make this bigger so we can see it. And then what I'm going to do here is, rather than make this 1 bar, I'm going to make this 4 bars. So the way I can do that, and it's very easy in Ableton to build upon what you've done, right? So here in the left-hand corner, I've got dupe loop, which means duplicate loop. I can do it once, twice, right? And then now that loop is now been extended out. Now it's 4 bars, right? So then what I'm doing at the end of the 4 bars, I'm going to just create kind of a cheesy fill. I'll just do that, right? And then that, right? And also just to and to add some more variety, I'm going to add a crash at the beginning of that, right? So now you can see this pattern is 4 bars long, right? And it's basically it's got a symbol at the beginning of the first bar. It goes on, you know, chugs along, and at the end it does this kind of fill, right? Let me just make it just a bit more obvious as well. Do that, actually. Do that, and do that. Cool. Okay, so then if I play vel, that's obviously the 1 bar loop, right? And then if I play the fill one, it'll be 1, 2, 3, and then you'll hear the fill. Yeah, you get the idea, right? Cool. So again, if I wanted to create a 4 bar loop, or even 8 bar, or even a 16 bar loop, I've got this option of playing the longer section. So it could be like, this is the section that I want to have to suggest changes coming, or you can do whatever you want to make a difference in terms of the variety of your kit. So you can do it that way. You can dupe it, of course. And again, the great thing about Ableton is that I could also say to myself, I could almost work the opposite way around, right? If I just, again, bring this, let me just do this, bring this down, copy this again, right? And I'm going to call this one fill 1B, as in 1 bar, right? And again, the great thing about Ableton is that, and you know, this, I'm just saying something a little bit more advanced now. is that, you know, this pattern is 4 bars, and you can see it's 4 bars because if you see this section here, it says loop, start position is bar 1, and it's 4 bar loop. Okay. What I can do is I can go, you know what, say for example, this was a really complicated pattern or loads of stuff going on, and I wanted to focus on just one section. I can do that very, very easily. I say to Ableton, I want this to be 1 bar, and I want you to focus on just this end bit here. Oops, sorry. Just move this to 1 bar. So now, even though this is a 4 bar pattern, Ableton is only going to play the fill section, which is this section here, right? So if I play this, it will just hear it. Yeah. So I've got an option there where I can break this longer pattern into a smaller pattern. I can even make this shorter. I can make this, at the moment it's 1 bar, I can make it 2 beats, right? So it's that. Yeah, or I can make it just a fill section, right? That section there. Yeah, and it has obviously repercussions if it's, you know, so the good thing about this is that I can then bounce along, have this one playing, and if I wanted to go to the shorter one, yeah. So the good thing is that, you know, you can create lots of, you know, you can experiment with different variations. You can experiment with different sections, particularly when you start going into, going into a clip itself and changing the loop length. Okay. And it starts to get really, really interesting when you start looking at loop lengths. And I'm going to leave you with one more thing. Someone said they couldn't find any shakers to work with, right? So I'm just going to quickly show you how to get some shakers. So one way to find a shaker, well, there's a few ways you can work, right? What we could do is if I go into this 808 here, and I could say, if I just make this go here, right? I could either work with this kit, right? But what I won't do is I'll actually create our own one, right? So I'll make a track of my own by going create insert MIDI track, or do Shift Command T, okay? I go to instruments, I go to drum rack. Remember we saw this empty one at the beginning, right? This one here hasn't got anything in. Look, if I go to 808, it looks very similar because it's the same instrument, but R1 is empty, okay? And in Ableton, if you go to samples, you've got access to a whole bunch of samples at your disposal. So if I type here, I go shaker, S-H-A, and I see here I've got loads, and you can audition them. So obviously if I type in shaker, it'll be shaker, right? Right. So let's just use, say, that one. So I drag that here, right? Let me find another one. Say that one, drag that here. Okay, let's find one more. This one here. Okay, so now if I go in, and the great thing about doing it this way, so let's just take a step back. What I did was I created an instrument, a MIDI track by going to create, insert MIDI track, right, to create an empty one. Once I created an empty one, I went to instruments. I went to, where have you gone now? Oh, sorry, my bad. It's because I've still got the field on. I went to instruments and dragged the drum rack, empty one, into this channel. And then I just went to samples, searched for samples, and dragged the samples that I want into this kit, right? So now if I go to this, create an empty clip here, you'll see that because I'm using a drum rack, I've got the 3 samples that I worked with, right? So let me just audition those, right? So let me just use this shaker here, this Cabasa sound. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this across in a similar way that I did the hi-hat. So I'm going to either double click, right? Or what you can do is in Ableton, anything you want to duplicate, you do Command D. Okay. So, so if I just play that now, I'm going to stop this beat a second and play this. Right. That sounds kind of okay. It sounds quite drum machine-y, right? But where I can create some variation, again, if I go back to the velocity thing that I showed you, right? Let me just change a few of these. Right, just go. Okay, cool. So now I've just added the, you can see here with the velocities, it adds some variation. It just gives a nice little kind of vibe to it because it gives it some movement, right? One other thing, so at the moment, this is all at the 16th resolution. That means that in one bar, there is 16 slots for me to play with, right? If I wanted to get a little bit more intricate, right, I can go here, right? I can zoom in, hold on a second. Where is it now? Right, so if I hit Control on this number here, I've got this access to the grid and I can change the grid, right? I'm just gonna do it very simply. At the moment it's on 16ths, I'll do it to 32 notes. So what this means now, right, is that I've actually got the resolution of this has doubled, right? So rather than having 16 slots, I've now got 32 slots in that one bar. What does that mean for us? It basically means that we can get a little bit more intricate. So if I go here, change this here, copy this across, right? Hear how that sounds now that there's now double the amount of notes in that space. Yeah, and I can do the same thing maybe here, go in, add another note. And again, with some nuancing, you can make this sound really kind of, you can get some really interesting rhythms going, patterns going. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you that because that way of getting a bit deeper into more kind of nuanced programming is the way to do it, by doubling the resolution of the actual clip length. And again, if you wanted to get inside trap hi-hat programming territory, going into a clip and going into 32 notes and even 64 notes, and that's where you kind of get that kind of really intricate hi-hat programming techniques. Not just for programming, for any kind of sound, right? So the good thing about this is that if I play this rhythm, in fact, let me just add a couple of the other ones, just to give it some, add some others there. Just do that, okay. Yeah, and again, what's good about this in Ableton, on sends A and B, you've got reverb and delay. So let me add some reverb to this. And play the original beat I had, 3 and. And just go through them. You get the idea, right? So the thing to take from this, and of course, this is just tip of the iceberg, as you can imagine, right? We haven't looked at anything melodic apart from, say, tuned. The toms can obviously create some kind of melodic direction if we wanted to go that route, as you can hear. But with this is obviously just tip of the iceberg. in terms of the scope of what you can do when it comes to programming. But the thing I want you to get from today is that, you know, really focusing on this idea of the 1-bar loop. And, you know, it's at least in the first instance, in your first time of working with Ableton in terms of building rhythms and understanding rhythm, is first of all, know your history in terms of 808, 909, 626, 727, 707, Lin drum, LM1, LM2, Lin 9000, SB12, MPC 60, etc., etc., etc. And there's a whole bunch of them others, just to get an idea of the flavor, what they sound like, right? You know, and then, you know, because then again, you'll get to know what you like, you know, the kind of sounds that you like that move you. Of course, definitely found your own sounds. And the great thing about using drum rack is you can obviously drop your own sounds in here and create interesting percussion, interesting layers, etc., etc. But the thing to get across is this idea of this 1-bar loop and really understanding how to generate rhythms and move yourself, move people in this 1-bar loop as a good starting point, and getting to know what different rhythms look like visually. And then use that as a building block to then, of course, build rhythms, then obviously think about bass lines and other aspects, bringing in other kind of loops and textures to then start building your tracks. And before you know it, you'll be rinsing it. Okay.
Tony, I just have a burning one. I kind of
yes.
Yeah, I won't take it. I kind of missed the part where how you pull off the channels and mess around with the like mute and unmute.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
Let me just go back to my screen. Of course I can.
Yeah,
of course. Right, so let me just go back here. Okay, right, so let me just let me make this clean this up. So the great thing about drum rack as an instrument is that, as you know now, it has these, when you get one from the library, you usually have 16 sounds at your disposal. You can actually access more, and you can add more if you wanted. You know, you've got these, like, see here, you've got layers and layers and layers of them. So you could, in fact, add more. But for me personally, I like to create my own, keep the stock ones the way they are, make my own, right? And then within each, when you use a drum rack, you see the top right hand corner here, you've got this kind of arrow, this little arrow here. If you click on that, it then opens up, it goes under the hood, and then you've got access to the volume and some additional controls for that particular instrument, right? So if you see here, the kick drum is this one. Yeah, this is the kick, this channel here, right? So if I play this track, right, I can hit this to stop it. Yeah, and then this one, I can also solo it. So I hit S, it'll solo that channel, right? The same way it would be a solo channel in Ableton. So what's good about this is that I can then, if I wanted to control the muting and bringing drum elements in and out manually, like as a performance, right? I could essentially map that in Ableton, right? So if I hit key here, right? If you hit key, then what Ableton is looking for is for me to click on any of those parameters that are in orange, and then I then decide what key to use to play it, right? To control it. So you can see here, I've got on my kick drum, I've got Q, on my snare, I've got W, on my hi-hat here, I've got E, okay? And let me do a couple more now, right, while I'm here. I'm gonna do the hi-hat, the toms. I'll do R, where's the other one? There, I'll do Y, and where's the other one? Here, U, just on my keyboard, right? So now I've mapped the keyboard, you know, my notes on my key. See they're turning off and on? I'm just pressing the notes, right? So why this is cool is because I can, while the track is playing, I might decide to just get jam it the same way I'll be a DJ or on the mixing board, and just get different vibes going, right? So if I play this now, this is my groove. I can mute a few of them. 1, 2, 3, and. Bring the kick drop in, 2, 3, and. Then bring the other thing in. Take out the toms. You get the idea, right? So obviously if I had more time, I'd rinse it, but you get my point. What that allows you to do is, again, when it comes to making music, and for me, particularly with Ableton, one thing that's great about it is that it's very physical. You know, once you get into this workflow of bringing up some drums, 1 bar loop, programming some drums, getting some ideas. If while it's playing, it's playing on your speakers or on your headphones, you can be vibing to it, right? Map some of the notes to some keys, bringing them in and out. Again, getting a different vibe to it. Before you know it, you're generating some performance ideas and some rhythm ideas and arrangement ideas that you can take to the arrange page. Okay. Wicked.
Just want to jump in. I have to run to pick up my son from football.
We're done.
You were done? Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Somebody can give it up for
that was amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tony. And we did the 3 hours. It didn't even feel like 3 hours. We could go on for another 3 hours. Everything was so perfect because most of the people here are starting out with Ableton. They're not super familiar with it. So everything was super understandable. Much love going on in the chat. Oucha, we want you back for another session.
Cool, love to.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And I'm guessing we can stay in touch, and the ladies will be out making beats and stuff, so we can wrap that up also and send it to you, and just
that'd be amazing. That would be amazing. Yeah. So a couple of things just to close, right? So we all make music in lots of different ways, and our journey is very personal, right? So really just build slowly, and if you use your voice or you play keys, you rap, complement building the beats with your other instrument, because you'll find that there's this really good interplay between just creating a scratch track, even if it's a scratch track, 1 bar scratch, right? You'll find a lot of the time it'll be a really good foundation. You end up just keeping it, because if you use your voice, make just even freestyle over it, or you know how it is. Just when you write songs, or however you want to write songs, because you're doing them in parallel, it means that you've got a really quick way to develop a rhythm or create a mood for your track. Try different tempos. If you've written at 123, take it down to 90, see how that feels. Take it up to 140, see how that feels. Because the tempo, of course, if you want something that's very direct, I want a dance floor track, of course, you've got some, you've got some limitations there. Not limitations, you've got more to think about. But if it's a track you're just discovering for yourself, and you don't really care what it's for, and you just want to write music, by changing the tempo, changing the mood, and of course that will influence how you perform, the speed of your rhymes, the dynamics of your melody, and these things in turn will definitely help your songwriting. And then lastly, with this drum rack, don't underestimate an empty drum rack. Really don't underestimate it, because as you saw how easy it was for me to add these shakers. Imagine if they were your sounds. Imagine they were, your voice, going woo, or clapping, or the wind outside your house, or you rustling some paper, or you playing a chord on your keyboard and programming those, right? And I haven't talked about pitch today. That's a whole nother conversation. But you can really start to personalize your music making and your music, your songwriting, because of this way of working. All right.
Great. Thank you. Cool. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, David, making this happen. Thank you,
Yeah,
Tony.
thank you, David.
Thank you,
Awesome.
guys.
Yes.
Thank you.
Take care,
All
everyone.
right. Good night.
Have a great evening. Take care.
We'll be in
Bye.
touch.
See you on Friday, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Everyone.